back to Beauty Bedtime Stories. This is chapter 6, our final chapter in Beauty and Cosmetics, 1550 to 1950 by Sarah Jane Downing. I'm Hilary Clark Mina, and we are going to snuggle in, get cozy, and finish the last chapter of this book as we move through the 1920s into the 30s, the 50s, and then beyond. We will be picking up a new book from here. So get comfortable, and here we go. From Elegance to Expression. Women were winning emancipation and taking a voice for themselves. Their words outlined in scarlet lipstick. Nothing spoke more loudly of independence. It was the bold declaration of pulling out a lipstick tube that delighted women as it shocked men and outraged the older generation. It was fresh, feminine, and controversial, especially the design developed by Elizabeth Arden, which was based on the bullet shape of a First World War shell casing. Gotta love that. Whatever was worn in Hollywood was transferred by the hyper-reality of the big screen and eagerly emulated by cinema goers everywhere. Beauty became 10 feet tall, with a procession of gorgeous silent stars, their dark eyes flashing, their bee-stung lips pouting with daringly dark lipstick, bringing emphasis to the center of the mouth, which was perfectly equipped with a bow Cupid himself would have been proud of. Seeing the makeup in such detail encouraged greater precision, and lipstick came of age with a wider choice of shades, from bright red to burgundy, applied in an artistic double sweep. Meanwhile, fan magazines were quick to convey which actresses used which product, and visited the beauty salons of Elizabeth Arden, Helena Rubinstein, and Max Factor. As the 1920s progressed, the cute Cupid's bow and bee-stung lips so admired on the it girl Clara Bow were evened out to a more natural lip line, but they still remained dark. The silent stars had dealt in melodrama with flashing, heavily lined eyes. But ironically, as the talkies or the talking pictures took over from silent movies in 1927, emphasis left the lips and eyebrows became the primary focus. Plucked almost into extinction, they transformed the face of beauties like Jean Harlow from pretty to exotic. A fantasy fairy woman, at once elfin and sweet, with a Cupid doll pout, but with a sardonic edge like Mae West, whose sophisticated humor made it absolutely clear that she would not be messed with. In the summer of 1927, the first Vogue cover featuring a tanned model appeared, and finally, the classic complexion of the lily and the rose was challenged. The bright young things had been trooping to the Riviera each summer since the early 1920s and would no doubt have returned sun-kissed, but it took Coco Chanel to endorse the look and its effect beyond the beach. It was suddenly chic to go sunburn, and Murad Guinness wrote, "We practically live in bathing suits and coconut oil." But if you could not go to the beach, you could visit a sun clinic or go to the Lido. And Noel Croward described its frowsy splendor, every inch dented and depressed by recumbent, sun-blistered bodies. For the very first time, tanned arms and backs appeared with evening gowns as formal gloves were abandoned. And by the end of the decade, sandals began to appear when shoe designers realized that women wanted to show off their crimson-polished toes. You know, the Riviera was a stockingless heaven, according to Vogue. And never had so much flesh been on display, partly prompting people to tan and partly as a response to it. Freedom and glamour came on four wheels as the automobile became as essential as lipstick. New technology from the automobile industry revolutionized the manicure, and fingertips sparkled with precision gloss. Previously, the fashionable look was a healthy glow created with tinted nail oil and shined with a chamois buffer. But development of cellulose-based paint allowed for a gloss enamel that could transform nails. Mostly the shades remained clear or pink, but red was most popular for toes, even with the girls whose fingertips remained neutral. Hollywood stars like Marlene Dietrich and Anna Mae Wong grew their nails long and wore the half-moon manicure in scarlet, the tips and half-moons of the nails left unpainted. By the early 1930s, a wider range of shades were available. Oh my goodness, pardon me. Oh my. Cardinal, garnet, and coral became favorites, but the Woolworth heiress Barbara Hutton was seen wearing black, and for a brief moment it was the rage to wear blue nails, green eyeshadow, and orange lipstick. Aside from experimentation by the young, cosmetics were an essential part of good grooming and an exciting part of going out. Cecile Beaton wrote of the London season for Vogue in 1928. Let's see what Cecile had to say. Well, the greatest fun of all is the making up, which takes at least 6 hours. Strong estrogen first to tighten one's face into a Paula Gellibrand mask. Liquid powder, rouge, best black bog for building out the eyelashes, turquoise grease for the lids, vermilion for the eyes, and for the nostrils, carmine for the lips. Nostrils, interesting. More women wished to be well-groomed and elegant, especially when Vogue pointed out somewhat backhandedly, quote, "Today, an old boot of a face can win all along the line, since our present standards demand beauty of figure and finish rather than mere prettiness." Let me translate that for you. They're basically saying that an old boot of a face or a plain Jane still stood a chance because the present standards of beauty demand that finish and polish were more important than just natural good looks. I mean, okay, I can agree with this sentiment. Everyone is beautiful. And, if you feel like putting in the effort, you certainly should. And if you don't, you shouldn't. But that's a little crass, don't you think? Well, I digress. Here we go. More women wish to be well-groomed and elegant. Oh, we already went there, pardon me. The 1930s brought artificial nails and individual false eyelashes, but most women were more concerned with the distressing effects of the Great Depression. Oh my goodness, you guys, I'm so sorry. I hope that you're sleepy too, and I apologize if I'm making you yawn. We'll start that one more time. The 1930s brought artificial nails and individual false eyelashes, but most women were more concerned with the distressing effects of the Great Depression. Glamour was generally absent from life except for the weekly night of escapism at the cinema. There they could at least temporarily be in heaven while watching gorgeous Ginger Rogers dancing on marble and wearing silk. Cosmetics were more freely available from chemists and budget stores like Woolworth's, where, even if nothing else, most women could afford to treat themselves to the occasional lipstick. By 1931, 1,500 times as many lipsticks were sold in London as had been sold a decade earlier. Okay, let's pause and think about this for a moment. By 1931, 1 year into the 30s, 1,500 times as many lipsticks were sold in London alone as had been the entire decade of the 20s. So 1 year in the middle of the Depression, or beginning of the Depression, 1,500 times as many lipsticks were sold as the previous decade before. I'd say we were gaining some traction, ladies. What do you think? Oh my. Okay. In the 1930s, all the stars had distinctive brows, and if like Greta Garbo, oh my gosh, my goodness, I might have to re-record this. I'll put this version up and I might replace it. Let me know if you're terribly offended. Let's start that again. In the 1930s, all of the stars had distinctive brows, and if, like Greta Garbo, they arrived in Hollywood tragically plain, they were whisked away immediately to have their dowdy natural brows plucked into delicate arcs. High and narrow they rose above the ghastly reality of the Depression, and by the end of the decade, Vivien Leigh took on a wordless attitude of defiance against impending war with her querulous raised eyebrows in Gone with the Wind. Women squared up to the Second World War of the century with a strong, healthy look. Max Factor had developed Color Harmony, a wider color palette with shades designed specifically for blondes, brunettes, brownettes, and redheads, based on the products available at his Hollywood salon. Oh boy. Where the stars were treated in different rooms, color coordinated to complement their coloring. One of the most innovative beauticians, Max Factor's products had been at the forefront of Hollywood makeup design on screen and off since 1914. When movies went Technicolor, he created pancake makeup, a range of strong mid-flesh tones, especially for use on film. But the flexible color foundation was so good at covering blemishes, and so many were stolen from dressing rooms, that Max Factor had to make pancake makeup compacts commercially available. Trust me, as a professional makeup artist, you know things are good when the talent steals them out of your kit. Wartime austerity limited women's cosmetic choices. Although the government co-opted cosmetic companies' production lines for the war effort, they ensured that there was still a supply of lipstick and powder available to maintain morale. While companies like Cyclax dedicated their production to developing sunscreen and camouflage makeup to be used on the front line, their production of regular women's cosmetics was curtailed by the limitation of supplies order of 1940 in Britain. They did, however, have the resources to develop Cyclax Stockingless Cream, a deep skin tone made with the addition of a line of eyebrow pencil down the back to mimic fashionable seamed nylons. Okay, back up. Basically what they did, because nylons were rationed, you could not use nylon. Nylon was being used for parachutes. So women's seamed stockings were no longer available. So they developed a body makeup that they sold with an eyebrow pencil. And sometimes you'll find photos of women that looks like they're drawing a line up the back of their leg with a long ruler. That's what they're doing. They've put on the body makeup to look like stockings, and they're tracing what would have been the seam up the back of their leg. Nothing will keep us down, right? Oh boy, it's so fascinating. Okay, next. Lipsticks had to be eked out to the last vestige, or were, like nylons, only available from generous GIs or the black market. In the USA, Elizabeth Arden made her own contribution to the war effort. A kit of lipstick, rouge, and nail polish named Montezuma Red, which was the perfect color match to the chevron stripes on the uniforms of American Marine Corps Women's Reserve. She also set her London laboratory to develop a revolutionary preparation known as scar cream, to be used by plastic surgeons, which could conceal even the scars from severe burns. Makeup made an important statement beyond a decorative stiff upper lip. In Germany, the Nazi Party was trying to enforce an idealized Aryan look on the nation's women, insisting that they wore the party uniform or the pseudo-Bavarian natural costume that they advocated, with a dirndl and braided hair encircling a shiny, unadorned face. Needless to say, German women were not happy to acquiesce and might well have felt their morale slipping in the lipstick red smiling face of the Allied women's forces. All the recruitment and propaganda posters showed land girls and Rosie the Riveter in practical trousers with their hair tied back, yet still glamorous with long eyelashes and scarlet smiles. Articles like, "How do you look when he comes home?" in the 1942 issue of Good Housekeeping took a strict line with readers. It said, "Today, there are no good excuses to let appearances slide. A woman's job of keeping herself attractive is as important now as it ever was. Ask any man who comes home tired after a long day's work and surroundings which are probably anything but lovely, and he'll say there's nothing more restful, more stimulating than seeing his wife look fresh and charming. It makes him think, well, anyway, the day has been worthwhile." I feel like that should have been a quote from the 50s. I mean, I suppose we're inching into that more through the 40s, but very interesting time. Very, very interesting time. And in our next book, we're going to talk a little bit about the conflict that happened and just what changes with women when they go from, being responsible for holding society together during wartime when most of the men are gone, and then relegated back to the home when the men come back. If they come back, of course, we know a lot of them didn't, but it could have been handled more delicately. I think it was jarring, and it created some discontent that was otherwise unnecessary. Anyway, enough for my commentary. We will do that when we do museum tours. Back to our book. And if put off by the lack of beauty products available, they ran features like Kitchen Beauty Calendar in August 1944, which suggested a host of beauty remedies be made with vegetable scraps and sour milk. Emergency Beauty in July 1944 suggested using calamine lotion in place of complexion milk, and, if the water supply was cut, a dry bath by dousing the body in talc, leaving on a few minutes, then rubbing vigorously with a rough towel. If all else failed, cultivate serenity. The calm outlook, the masculine why worry air, is the one to adopt, ladies. Life won't be any easier if you fuss and fume, and you'll certainly be less charming to see and to know. Although a masculine attitude was deemed an advantage in the extreme circumstances of war, as soon as the fighting was over, the authorities could not wait to send women back to domestic isolation. Some were happy to return, but others needed some encouragement, and the new look, debuted by Christian Dior in 1947, provided the perfect answer. Fit for a princess, with more in common than the crinoline of the 1850s than anything seen in the 20th century, the tiny waist, spindly stiletto heels, and lavish full skirts were the ultimate in fantasy femininity, made even more desirable by the continued rationing. Achieving the new look was key to leaving the war behind. Basically, we went back to corsets. We went from, comfortable trousers, working in factories, in the field, out in the world, supporting the war efforts, being proud of our contributions, to going right back into corsets, which we hadn't seen for the entire century, which, for a lot of people was such a relief. The war was over. We could go back to nylons. Rationing was over. But it's so interesting, isn't it? The way things turn. Plus, not being at war and being able to dress in a way that was maybe frivolous and fun and full of imagination was somewhat joyful after the very, very bleak, dark years. So I don't mean to put a negative spin on things, but it is fascinating. Before the war, eye makeup was generally absent during the day, but with the new look, soft doe eyes were suitable any time. Defined with a flash of eyeliner across the upper eyelid and drawn out like a raven's wing, eyes were elegant and expressive. But rouge was only a minimal dab trained to emphasize perfect bone structure. Ladies who during the war had to make do with taming unruly eyebrows with paste of flour and water were very keen to cultivate the new perfectly manicured, precision-penciled eyebrow, which took its lead from stars like Elizabeth Taylor, Audrey Hepburn, and Joan Collins. Lips were darker, stronger, and equally precise, drawn with a new Rimmel lip color palette that included a small brush and a mirror, or Goya's innovative thick and thin lipstick, which was a pair of lipstick tubes attached by a delicate chain, one thin and one firm. So one is slim, containing a thin and firm lipstick to outline, and the other a regular lipstick size containing a thick and glossy color to fill in. Lip line pencils created by Gala of London were described in the Glasgow Citizen in 1948. The very newest lipstick is not a lipstick at all, but a real lip pencil, long and slender and sheathed in a bright gold case. No more smudges as long as you can keep a fairly steady hand, and you should get a clear, better line because it really is easier to use. Helena Rubinstein's innovation of the liquid automatic mascara that came in a tube with a spiral brush brought on new drama to eyelashes. Meanwhile, as the decade drew on, lipstick became coronation pink as the queen ascended the throne, and it flirted with coral shades before going pale when Gala of London created a range of lipsticks with added titanium to make them pearlized. After centuries of fear that women's awareness of their own beauty and the power to heighten it would give them an unfair advantage, akin to magical powers, finally cosmetic beauty had come of age. With something of a sudden reversal, women who had grown up being told that only fast girls wore makeup, they were suddenly admonished that to appear barefaced showed a lazy lack of effort. I mean, what a trip, right? Even the church reversed its opinion. Having once promised hell to the painted Jezebel, it was now preaching, make an effort or lose your husband. And the London Opinion magazine in October 1954 went so far as to report, in 9 out of 10 cases, when a marriage broke down, it was fundamentally the woman's fault, and primarily through failing as a wife to maintain the high standard of personal appearance which she had set herself apart when she was a spinster. So, in conclusion, as we finish this book, my darlings, women who had variously used cosmetics as an act of worship to secretly enhance their life chances, to transform themselves, and to outline their outcry for emancipation had finally gained some kind of acceptance for the cosmetic art. Yet, in acceptance, found their hard-won right usurped as beauty was switched from a pleasure to an obligation. Well, the author may have left us hanging and left it there, but we certainly will not, because we know the beat goes on and we have continued to evolve and grow. So that concludes Beauty and Cosmetics 1550 to 1950. We are starting a new book together. Do not fear. Madeline Marsh, a beauty historian. We are starting Compacts and Cosmetics, Beauty from Victorian Times to the present day. It actually only goes through 2009, so we're going to have a lot to catch up on, but it is full of photos, full of history. She's cheeky. She's also a London author. So stay tuned and tune in, follow me, and you won't miss a single chapter. Until then, sweet dreams and get your beauty sleep. Good night.